The night she was born, the hospital was quieter than usual. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows, and the hallway lights reflected off clean floors that smelled of medicine and soap. Inside the delivery room, doctors and nurses moved with calm focus, aware that this was no ordinary family. Her father was a high-ranking admiral, a man known for commanding ships and leading thousands, yet at that moment none of that mattered. He stood still, hands clenched, eyes fixed on the small bed where his wife lay exhausted but hopeful. When the baby finally arrived, her cry was strong and clear. Relief washed over the room. For a brief moment, everyone smiled. The Admiral felt his chest loosen for the first time in hours. He stepped closer, his face softening as he looked at his daughter. She was small, red-faced, and perfect in a way only newborns are. He whispered words he had practiced in his mind for months, promising protection, love, and a future filled with pride. But within minutes, something felt off. A nurse gently clapped near the baby's ear while checking reflexes. The baby did not react. Another sound was made, louder this time. Still nothing. First, it was brushed aside. Newborns were unpredictable, they said. Maybe she was just tired. The Admiral wanted to believe that. He nodded, trusting the calm voices around him. Hours later, as the room emptied and the joy settled into quiet, tests were repeated. A machine hummed softly. Small sensors were placed on the baby's head. The screen showed lines and numbers that meant little to the parents but everything to the doctors. Faces grew serious. Words became careful. One doctor asked the Admiral and his wife to sit. The news came gently, but it landed hard. Their daughter showed no response to sound. Early signs pointed to complete hearing loss. More tests would be needed, but the chances were not good. The word born was repeated several times, as if to say this was not caused by a mistake or injury. It was simply how she came into the world. The Admiral did not speak right away. He had faced storms at sea and life or death decisions, but this felt different. This was not something he could command away or fix with authority. His wife held the baby close, tears sliding silently down her face. She kissed the child's forehead again and again, as if warmth alone could change fate. Over the next few days, specialists came and went. Each brought charts, explanations, and polite sympathy. They spoke of therapy, support systems, and adjusting expectations. They said the child could still live a full life, just a different one. The Admiral listened, nodded, asked precise questions, but inside him, something cracked. He had imagined teaching his daughter to recognize his voice, to hear the sound of waves, to laugh when he called her name. Now those dreams felt far away. The baby slept peacefully most of the time. When she was awake, her eyes wandered slowly around the room. She reacted to touch and light, but not to sound. Doors closed, footsteps passed, machines beeped, and she remained calm. Nurses spoke softly near her, even though it made no difference. Some habits were hard to break. When they finally brought her home, the house felt strange. It was too quiet or maybe too loud. The Admiral found himself watching his daughter constantly, testing small sounds without meaning to. A dropped spoon, a cough, a whispered word. Each time there was no reaction, and each time disappointment followed. He hated himself for hoping again and again. Family members visited with smiles that faded when they noticed the careful silence everyone kept. Gifts were given, congratulations offered, but there was an unspoken sadness in the air. Some people spoke too loudly, others avoided the topic completely. The Admiral thanked them all and returned to his duties, burying himself in work when he could. As weeks passed, the truth settled in. This was not a temporary issue. This was their reality. The Admiral's wife began learning sign language right away, practicing late into the night. The Admiral joined her, awkward at first, his strong hands struggling with gentle movements. Still, he tried. He refused to let distance grow between him and his child, even if the world she lived in was silent. At night, when the house slept, the Admiral sometimes stood by the crib. He would talk to his daughter anyway, telling her about the sea, about courage, about how proud he already was. He knew she could not hear him, but it mattered to him. It was his way of staying connected, of refusing to let silence win. Deep down, a small part of him held on to hope, even when doctors said not to. He did not speak of it. He did not want to give his wife false dreams. But somewhere in his heart, he believed that life still had something unexpected waiting for them. For now, all he could do was protect his daughter, love her fully, and face the future one quiet day at a time. The months that followed moved slowly, marked by small routines and quiet adjustments. The baby grew stronger, her hands opening and closing with curiosity, her eyes following movement with sharp focus. She smiled often, especially when she was held close. Anyone watching her would think she was just like any other child. Only the silence set her apart. The Admiral returned to duty, but his mind never fully left home. On long days, he caught himself wondering what his daughter was doing at that exact moment. Was she awake? Was she calm? Had she smiled again? At night, when he returned, he always went to her first, leaning over the crib, letting his finger rest lightly in her tiny palm. She would grip it tightly, and that simple touch became their strongest connection. Her mother took on the heavier load at home. She read everything she could find about children born without hearing. She joined support groups, watched videos, and practiced hand movements until her wrists ached. She spoke less and touched more, learning how important eye contact and expressions were. Slowly, she began to understand her daughter in ways words could never explain. As the baby turned into a toddler, differences became clearer. Other children turned their heads when someone called their name. She did not. Loud toys made no impression. Music played in the background meant nothing to her. At first, the Admiral felt anger rise during these moments, not toward his child, but toward life itself. He hated how unfair it felt. Still, he never let that anger reach her. Doctors' visits continued. Each appointment carried the same outcome. The tests confirmed what they already knew. The condition was real and permanent. Hearing aids were discussed, but the results were limited. The Admiral agreed to everything that might help, even a little. He told himself that even the smallest chance was worth taking. The first time the child wore a hearing device, the family watched her closely. They waited for any sign, any reaction. She blinked, moved her hands, then continued playing as if nothing had changed. The room felt heavy with disappointment. Her mother quietly removed the device later that night, tears falling onto the soft blanket as she folded it carefully away. As years passed, the child learned to walk, then run. She laughed often, a soundless laugh that filled her face with joy. She learned through pictures, gestures, and patience. Sign language became the family's shared world. The Admiral practiced every evening, repeating movements until they felt natural. Sometimes he made mistakes, and she would stare at him seriously before correcting him with small, firm hands. Those moments made him smile more than any medal ever had. Outside the home, things were harder. People stared when they realized the child could not hear. Some spoke loudly, others avoided eye contact. A few offered pity that felt heavier than silence. The Admiral stood tall during those moments, his presence alone enough to end most discomfort. Still, he worried about the day she would face the world without him beside her. At night, when the house was calm, he sometimes watched her sleep and wondered what she dreamed about. Without sound, her dreams must be different, he thought. Maybe richer in images, in feelings. That thought brought him some comfort. It reminded him that her world was not empty, only different. As she grew older, her intelligence became impossible to ignore. She noticed details others missed. A change in expression, a slight movement. She understood moods before words were spoken. Her teachers often commented on her focus and calm nature. The Admiral felt pride rise in his chest every time he heard those reports, even if the word heard no longer felt quite right. Still, there were moments that broke his heart. Birthday parties where she sat quietly while others shouted with excitement. Family gatherings where laughter erupted around her without warning. She smiled through it all, but the Admiral saw the brief confusion in her eyes. Those moments stayed with him long after the events ended. Her mother never gave up hope, though she rarely spoke of it. She believed that life had more paths than the ones doctors described. The Admiral did not challenge her belief. He had learned that hope, even quiet hope, was necessary to survive. One afternoon, during a routine hospital visit, the Admiral noticed something small but strange. When a metal tray fell nearby, the child flinched slightly. It was so quick that no one else seemed to notice. He told himself it was just vibration, just imagination. Still, the moment stayed with him. He mentioned it to a doctor who gently dismissed it. Children reacted to movement, the doctor said. There was no reason to reopen old tests. The Admiral nodded, but deep inside, a small spark flickered. He said nothing more, not wanting to chase a hope that might hurt later. Life continued. The family adjusted, adapted, and grew stronger together. Silence became normal. Love became louder than sound ever could be. Yet somewhere beneath the routines and acceptance, something unseen waited, ready to change everything in a way none of them could imagine. The hospital had become a familiar place again, not because of emergencies, but because of routine. Checkups, small evaluations, short conversations that usually ended the same way. For the Admiral's family, the building no longer carried fear. It was simply another stop in life, another place where silence followed them. On one ordinary morning, they arrived for what was expected to be a quick visit. The child walked beside her parents, holding her mother's hand, her eyes moving calmly across the busy hallway. Nurses passed by, carts rolled, phones rang, and voices echoed, yet none of it reached her. She focused on faces, not sounds. That day, someone new was assigned to assist with the appointment. She was young, recently transferred, her uniform still stiff from being new. Her steps were careful, her movements slightly unsure, as if she was still learning the rhythm of the place. She greeted the family with a polite smile and spoke softly, not knowing it made no difference. As the routine checks began, the young nurse watched closely. She noticed how the child responded to touch, how her eyes followed movement with sharp attention. Nothing about the child felt distant or unaware. In fact, she seemed deeply connected to everything around her, just in a different way. During one simple test, the nurse accidentally dropped a metal instrument. The sound echoed briefly across the room. Most people did not notice anything unusual, but the nurse did. The child's shoulders stiffened for a split second. It was subtle, almost invisible, but it was there. The nurse froze, her heart beating faster. She told herself not to jump to conclusions. Children reacted to vibrations, she knew that. Still, something about the timing bothered her. Felt too precise. She tried again, gently this time. While pretending to adjust equipment, she tapped lightly on a nearby surface, watching the child's face. The child blinked. Again, just slightly. The nurse's breath caught in her throat. She said nothing at first. She continued her work, her mind racing. She had been taught to trust data, reports, and past diagnoses. But she had also been taught to trust observation. And what she was seeing did not fully match what was written in the file. Later, when the senior staff stepped out, the nurse hesitated. She knew her place. She was new, inexperienced, and this family was important. Speaking up could make her look foolish. Worse, it could embarrass others who had already examined the child for years. Still, she could not ignore the feeling that settled in her chest. She approached the Admiral's wife carefully, choosing her words with respect. She asked simple questions about the child's reactions at home. Had she ever startled? Ever seemed aware of sudden changes? The mother paused. She thought of moments she had dismissed. A sudden turn of the head. A brief pause during play. Things she had always explained away. Hearing the nurse ask made those memories feel heavier. When the Admiral returned to the room, the nurse repeated her observations, her voice steady but humble. She did not promise anything. She did not challenge past doctors. She simply said she believed something might be worth looking at again. The Admiral listened closely. He remembered the moment years earlier when the tray had fallen and his daughter had flinched. He had buried that memory deep, afraid of false hope. Now it surfaced again, clear and sharp. A senior doctor was called back in. The nurse spoke again, this time more carefully, aware of the weight of her words. The doctor listened, arms crossed, expression neutral. He reviewed the file once more. The results were clear. The diagnosis had been consistent. Still, the doctor agreed to observe. Another small sound was made. Another small reaction followed. The room grew quiet in a different way. Not the silence the family knew so well, but the silence of people thinking. No promises were made. The doctor explained that reactions could be misleading. He warned against raising expectations. But he also agreed to schedule a more detailed evaluation. Not immediately, but soon. The nurse stepped back, her role finished for now. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She only hoped she had done the right thing. On the way home, the Admiral's wife held their daughter close. Her mind replayed every small moment she had ever ignored. The Admiral drove in silence, his thoughts heavy but alert. For the first time in years, uncertainty felt different. Felt alive. That night, the Admiral stood by his daughter's bed longer than usual. He spoke to her softly, as he always did, even though he believed she could not hear. But this time, something in his voice changed. It carried a fragile hope he had not allowed himself to feel before. The child slept peacefully, unaware of the quiet storm forming around her. The nurse went home that night too, exhausted and unsure, replaying the day again and again. She knew she might be wrong, but she also knew that sometimes, progress began with one person refusing to ignore a small detail. Somewhere between doubt and belief, between silence and sound, a door had cracked open. No one could see what waited on the other side yet. But for the first time, the future no longer felt completely closed. The days before the next hospital visit felt longer than usual. No one spoke openly about expectations, yet everyone felt the weight of them. The Admiral kept his routine steady, waking early, leaving for work, returning on time. His wife stayed calm on the surface, but her hands often trembled when she thought no one was watching. The child sensed the change, clinging closer, studying faces more carefully than before. When the day finally came, the hospital felt different. The same halls, the same smells, but the air carried tension. The Admiral walked with quiet purpose, his daughter's small hand resting in his large one. She looked up at him, searching his face for signals. He smiled and squeezed her hand gently, hoping his calm would reach her. They were led into a room filled with unfamiliar equipment. Machines stood silently, wires neatly arranged, screens dark for now. A senior doctor explained the process slowly, choosing careful words. He repeated that this was not a promise. The tests were meant to confirm or rule out possibilities, nothing more. The Admiral nodded. He had heard warnings before. Still, his heart beat harder than it had in years. The young nurse was there too, standing slightly back, hands folded. She looked nervous but focused. She avoided eye contact at first, afraid of giving the family hope she could not guarantee. Yet she could not hide the concern in her eyes when she looked at the child. The child was placed gently on a chair. Small sensors were attached with soft tape. She did not resist. She had learned long ago to trust hands that moved with care. Her mother stayed close, holding her shoulders, whispering reassurances she knew would not be heard but still mattered. The room grew quiet as the test began. A faint vibration passed through the equipment. The child blinked. The doctor adjusted settings, watching the screen closely. Lines moved. Numbers shifted. No one spoke. A slightly stronger signal followed. The child's fingers curled. Her brows tightened for a moment, then relaxed. The Admiral felt his breath catch. He did not move. He did not want to interrupt anything. The doctor frowned, leaning closer to the screen. He tried again, this time altering the frequency. The response came faster. The child turned her head just a little. Not much. Just enough. The room froze. The doctor raised a hand, signaling everyone to stay still. He repeated the signal once more. This time, the child reacted clearly, her eyes widening as if searching for something she could not yet understand. Her mother gasped, covering her mouth. Tears filled her eyes instantly. The Admiral felt a sharp pressure in his chest, a mix of fear and disbelief. He had imagined this moment so many times, yet now that it was happening, it felt unreal. The doctor stepped back slowly. He spoke carefully, explaining that the reactions suggested partial hearing ability, possibly blocked or misread in earlier tests. It was rare but not impossible. He emphasized again that more steps were needed. Treatment would take time. Nothing would happen overnight. The words barely registered. The Admiral watched his daughter closely. She seemed confused, unsettled, as if something new had brushed against her world. She reached for her mother, pressing her face into familiar arms. The nurse stood still, tears forming despite her effort to remain professional. She had hoped for a reaction, but seeing it unfold felt overwhelming. She realized how close this family had come to never knowing. After the test, the child was allowed to rest. The adults moved to another room, voices low. The doctor explained the next steps in detail. There would be further tests, adjustments, and careful monitoring. Progress would be slow, but the possibility was real. The Admiral listened, nodding, asking clear questions. His voice stayed steady, but his hands trembled slightly on the table. Years of discipline helped him remain composed, but inside, emotion surged like a wave breaking free. When they returned home later that day, the house felt unfamiliar. The same walls, the same furniture, yet everything seemed lighter, sharper. The child played quietly on the floor, unaware of the shift she had caused. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the Admiral sat beside her. He spoke softly as he always had, but this time he leaned closer, his voice gentler, more deliberate. He did not expect a response. He simply spoke. The child paused. She looked up at him, her expression uncertain. For a brief moment, her eyes locked onto his mouth, then his face. She tilted her head, as if sensing something new beneath the familiar rhythm of his presence. The Admiral's throat tightened. He said nothing more. He did not want to overwhelm her. He only smiled and rested his hand on her back. That night, sleep did not come easily for anyone. The Admiral lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day again and again. His wife held his hand, silent tears soaking the pillow. Neither needed words. At the hospital, the nurse sat alone in her small apartment, staring at the wall. She thought about how easily she could have ignored that first reaction. How easily this moment could have been lost. The thought made her shiver. No one celebrated yet. No one allowed joy to fully settle. But something had changed. The silence that once felt final now felt uncertain, fragile, as if it were slowly giving way to something else. The impossible no longer seemed so far away. The weeks after the test passed slowly, measured in small steps and careful waiting. Nothing dramatic happened right away. There were more hospital visits, more machines, more quiet conversations in rooms with closed doors. The doctors remained cautious, explaining that progress would not be sudden. The Admiral accepted this. After years of silence, he had learned patience. The child began a new routine of sessions designed to help her body and mind respond to sound. At first, she resisted nothing but reacted to little. She sat quietly, watching faces, sensing effort without understanding its purpose. Her mother stayed close during every session, offering comfort through touch and expression. The Admiral attended whenever duty allowed, sitting still, observing everything. One afternoon, during a simple exercise, a soft tone was introduced. It was gentle, almost like a breath. The child stiffened slightly. She looked around, confused. Her eyes searched the room, then settled on her mother's face. The room held its breath. It was not a full reaction, not yet, but it was real. From that day on, the changes came slowly but steadily. Sounds were introduced carefully, always paired with familiar sights and touch. A tap, a soft hum, the rustle of paper. The child began to respond in small ways. A pause, a blink, a turn of the head. Each reaction felt like a miracle built from patience. At home, the Admiral changed his habits without realizing it. He began speaking closer to his daughter, more gently, his words slower. He watched her face as he spoke, learning to recognize when she sensed something new. Sometimes she smiled for no clear reason. Other times she frowned, overwhelmed by sensations she had never known. One evening, as they sat together on the floor, the Admiral tapped lightly on the table beside them. The child looked down at the table, then up at him. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in recognition. He did not move. He did not speak. He only waited. She reached out and tapped the table herself. His chest tightened. He felt tears rise before he could stop them. He turned away briefly, ashamed of his weakness, then reminded himself that this was not weakness at all. This was release. Her mother noticed the changes too. She laughed more often now, a sound still quiet, but full of joy. She celebrated every small step, never pushing, never rushing. She understood that her daughter's world was expanding, and expansion could be frightening. The young nurse followed the progress from a distance at first. She did not want to intrude, but when the Admiral saw her in the hallway one day, he stopped her. He thanked her simply, without ceremony or rank. Just gratitude. The nurse struggled to respond, her voice unsteady. She had done her job, she said, but they both knew it had been more than that. Months passed. The child's responses grew clearer. She began to associate certain sounds with actions. A knock meant someone was there. A soft call meant attention. Her face showed wonder again and again, as if she were discovering a hidden layer of the world. The first time she reacted to her father's voice, it happened without warning. He was standing behind her, speaking softly as usual. She paused. Slowly, she turned. Her eyes met his. He stopped breathing. She did not smile right away. She studied him, as if trying to understand what she had just felt. Then she stepped toward him and placed her hand on his chest, feeling the vibration there. That was enough. The Admiral knelt and held her tightly, careful not to overwhelm her. His shoulders shook, but he did not hide it this time. He let her feel his emotion, knowing that honesty mattered more than control. Life did not suddenly become easy. There were still challenges, moments of frustration, days when progress felt slow. But the silence that once defined their lives no longer ruled them. It had become something softer, something shared. The child continued to learn, to adapt, to grow. She still used signs, still relied on touch and sight. But now, sound had joined her world, quietly, respectfully. It did not replace what she knew. It added to it. The Admiral learned something too. He learned that strength was not only found in command or certainty. Sometimes it lived in listening, in waiting, in trusting the smallest signs. One evening, as the family sat together, the house filled with a gentle sound. Rain tapped against the windows, steady and calm. The child paused, then looked toward the glass. She watched the drops slide down, her expression thoughtful. Her mother signed a question. The child thought for a moment, then tapped the window lightly, copying the rhythm she felt. The Admiral smiled. The world had not changed overnight. But for this family, everything was different. Silence had not disappeared. It had simply learned to share space with sound. And in that balance, they found something deeper than what they had once hoped for. They found understanding. They found patience. They found each other.